It's hard to imagine New Braunfels without a Chamber of Commerce. In fact, since its inception in 1919, not a single year goes by where the Greater New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce has not influenced the growth and quality of life of this unique community. It was there that they established an organization to promote the commercial resources of the city, as well as a mechanism to meet future needs. 100 years on, and the founding vision is stronger than ever. The Chamber understands that the root of all business is people. It's the people who rise up early to turn on the lights, start the engines, put out the fires, and put pen to paper. People who put in countless hours to hone their craft and make a living. It's the 8-to-5ers, the go-getters, and the late-nighters. It's the people who are dedicated to making their community a better place to live and do business. This is who the Chamber is, and what they do is a collective commerce. Helping the residents of New Braunfels achieve the American dream has been at the core of the Chamber's work. Much like in the days of the early 20th century, the initiatives to foster this prosperity include establishing new industry while still supporting existing business, being a catalyst for infrastructure improvements, promoting New Braunfels as a tourist destination, advocating for Chamber members, and locking arms with the community for the betterment of all. When the proverbial book was closed on that archetypal meeting back in 1919, this new organization had adopted two critical founding principles: to promote the city's commercial resources and to advocate advanced methods in municipal affairs. These principles have since become a promise by the Chamber to the citizens of New Braunfels. A promise the Chamber will continue to keep for the next 100 years. The Greater New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce. Success flows here.
While craftsman guilds dated back to medieval times, it wasn't until 1599 that the first Chamber of Commerce was formed in Marseille, France. Chambers have always stood at the crossroads of business and government, established to safeguard business opportunities. When the U.S. Chamber was founded in 1912, New Braunfels, Texas recognized the opportunity for its residents.
We had some very visionary citizens that said, you know, if we're going to make it as a community and be successful, we cannot be just agrarian-based and just trade dollars among ourselves. We've got to bring in industry, and we've got to make this a place where people want to live. And so the formation of the Chamber from an early time, the very earliest times in 1919, was promote commerce and promote quality of life through municipal affairs. And that's the combination that we still use today.
I think our Chamber is one of the most active, productive, impactful chambers that I have seen.
There are few that can compare as far as all of the activities, all the job creation that's done.
And so I see the Chamber of Commerce as sort of the workhorse of our community.
The Chamber has had their hands in so many things that have made and built up this community.
They really look at the whole picture of the community and how it's growing, the direction that it's going in.
Being able to help retain the integrity, the identity of our community, and yet still help us grow.
After 100 years, they've been doing something right.
Everything that they do for the residents, the businesses, the nonprofits, the city, the county, phenomenal.
And so I think why it's had the staying power is that the people that have been involved for a long time.
We have over 2,000 members. That's very unusual.
We're so involved and people just really, really care.
You can be a community where you close off and you say, okay, these are the only people that get to be involved, or you can take the pattern that the New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce has taken, which is to be welcoming.
I guess the most important thing about the Chamber is it's very inclusive. They actually reach out into the community to develop leaders.
That is what I believe sets them apart, just bringing everyone in together to make those goals happen. They can't do it on their own, but they're really good at bringing the right players together, and that's our Chamber. They want everyone to succeed, and you gotta love that. You gotta have that in your back pocket or we're not gonna make it.
The New Braunfels Chamber has evolved into something more than what it was originally intended to be. A chamber of commerce and community, groups of doers living and making a living, asking the what if we questions to improve the overall quality of life for all those who call this place home. Due to the recruitment by the chamber after World War I, dozens of woolen mills were attracted to the area, including Mission Valley Textile Company, which became the largest employer in the city. But as the 21st century closed in, the chamber recognized the importance of diversification.
If you could imagine any town that relies on one source for all of its livelihood and becomes lazy and relies simply on that instead of continuing to grow the entire economic base, you know, the examples they're endless out there of towns that have died. You have to have all of it. You can't be just a farming community. You can't have just a mill, which was the case a long time ago. You have to have a wide variety of economic base. And there's your chamber at New Braunfels. They are not lazy.
While attracting big business is key to economic growth, an often overlooked benefit is the increase in property value.
A lot of times the general public doesn't understand the relationship between business and their neighborhood, their lifestyle. Business creates the greatest percentage of tax revenue for any city. A good example is a Walmart distribution center. A lot of people, as I understand it, were opposed to that happening when it did decades ago. But the men and women who were leading the business community at that time realized what a tremendous benefit the inventory tax on a Walmart distribution center would be.
And I'll never forget, one man came to me and said, "You just gave a tax break to the richest man in the world, Sam Walton." And I said, that farm out there was paying a couple of $1,000s in taxes. Now there are 1,000 people working out there and they're paying over $1 million in taxes. If that's giving away the farm, I've got another 24 farms that I want to give away.
I remember the discussion that Walmart was going to be and was the largest taxpayer in the county of Comal the day it opened. The day it opened. And still to this day is one of our larger taxpayers. The great story to tell about that success, which is they've just celebrated their 30th year, that distribution center, which has grown in size. I got to meet some of those employees who have actually worked at the distribution center for the last 30 years. A couple of them had worked at the mill when the distribution center opened. At the time, our textile mills were still ongoing operations. Those textile mills are no longer in operation. Those jobs would have been lost and wouldn't have been replaced.
It worked out to be a wonderful asset and been a great community partner.
In 1995, at the urging of the Chamber, New Braunfels voters passed a half-a-cent sales tax to be set aside specifically for economic development, creating a 501c3. Based on a board formed in 1928, this new entity became the Greater New Braunfels Economic Development Corporation, also known as 4B. Supported by the Chamber, 4B is the differentiator for attracting new business.
Its focus is on economic development, but economic development takes many different forms. The quality of life that a community has, the infrastructure that a community has can make or break a good economy.
It is our greatest economic tool in the city of New Braunfels. Without 4B, there'd be a number of things that may not have occurred. The Das Rec, the golf course, Fisher Park, name something in New Braunfels, and I guarantee you something successful, something that's impactful, something that benefits the citizens of New Braunfels and the taxpayers of New Braunfels and the business community of New Braunfels. And I guarantee that 4B probably has played a role in it. And again, I tie that right back to the New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce.
I guess one of those that stands out in my mind is Canadian General Tower, a group from Canada that was looking to expand their operations to the U.S. Those 4B dollars were used to make sure those folks with Canadian General Tower knew that we were the right place for them to be. It turns out that we got down to the final three. 4B had placed a really very well thought out and well organized package on the table, and probably one of the most exciting days of my life was when we got the call saying that New Braunfels was their only option. Now let's get to work and see what we can do. We're chosen over one other country, 6 other states, another city in Texas. Makes us feel really pretty good. They're a company that we really wanted. Not only are they a Tier 1 automotive supplier, but they are a family-owned company and they are a corporate citizen that believes in giving back to the community. A really neat project that came out of 4B.
Critical to the success of companies such as CGT and Walmart is our community's transportation system.
Of course, one of the big areas for Chamber's involvement through the year has been transportation, mobility. It was that leadership that suggested that land be purchased around the community that became Loop 337. All that right-of-way was attained in the early 1950s. And as we sit here today, Loop 337 is being widened much faster than it would have been because the Chamber acted some 60 years ago.
Currently, we have the multiple lanes of Interstate 35 coming through the city of New Braunfels. But there was a plan, and TxDOT was going to end the multiple lanes at the north of New Braunfels, and those lanes would not see the multiple lanes again until you were south of town. And New Braunfels would essentially be a blockade or an impediment to transportation up and down Interstate 35.
So back in those days, you had to go to a TxDOT commission hearing in Austin and make your case. We're trying to convince them to go ahead and finish this, at the time, over $100 million more to do it through the New Braunfels. That's probably like asking for nearly $1 billion today. And we realize that the commission gets a lot of requests. So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, here's where the Chamber is pretty creative. Because of our heritage and Wurstfest, we took with us a lot of sausage links that were all connected. And at the end of our presentation with our 40 foam boards, we had our volunteers grab the sausage links and stretch it out from one end of the TxDOT commissions to the other. And we said, commissioners, don't let New Braunfels be the missing link. They howled with laughter, they loved it, and the bottom line was, we got the project.
Those are some of the things that the citizens of New Braunfels may not be aware of because it didn't happen. Had it happened, you bet they'd have been aware of.
One of the happenings making headlines in 2013 was one of the city's largest employers suddenly closing its doors. Over 1,000 New Braunfels residents lost their jobs when the scooter store declared bankruptcy. Citizens were overwhelmed with shock, and the future of this community suddenly looked bleak. While experts said it would likely take a decade or more to recover, the Chamber had other ideas.
A business closure is never fun, and you want to make it as easy as possible for those folks that are losing their jobs as well as those business owners.
You know, we are going to get a black eye once in a while, but when you look at what's left as an asset and turn around and do something with it, that's a great example of how it works in this town.
All of those folks who were displaced had jobs within the first 12 months or even less. We were also on the other side heading out to do some recruiting. We now have a large 3-story building with another larger 1-story building next to it looking to fill. So all but about 30,000 square feet of all that space is now taken. And so that's the job of a chamber, is to not just promote the good business and the good times, but to support and underscore the fact that we can provide for those folks that end up losing jobs.
And it was because of 4B, the chamber, the management of the business community, that was taking a lemon and making lemonade.
As history has reflected, the chamber has always been dedicated to look after its own.
So from those early days of the peddlers coming over with their baked goods and going door to door, and the concerns that gave to the local merchants that were doing the same thing, it was easy for somebody to answer the door. Oh, I don't have to walk to the store or get in my car and go shop. I could just buy it right there. It took the chamber to say, well, yes, that's convenient, but look what's happening when you do that. Here's what we lose in the economy. Those dollars are taken out of town forever. It doesn't circulate around the community. So it was the chamber that reminded people to think twice before you don't shop local.
In the early 2000s, citizens were again taking their money out of the city, a process known as leakage. In order to combat this, the chamber endorsed the development of new shopping centers.
If you look at Creekside, a tremendous asset for New Braunfels.
A group of people got together and said, we need to really provide some more retail opportunity for the city of New Braunfels and for the citizens. And so they did it. Shopping, recreation, the fun things that people were going to San Antonio and Austin for that they can now do in New Braunfels. And that project, once it got off the ground, brought Resolute Hospital. When you start thinking about over $300 million invested in a hospital and having that facility there to be able to serve the needs for our community in addition to what Christus does, it's significant because our community is growing. And then of course you can't forget the corner where Buc-ee's is and the Beaver.
Couldn't be a better example of how the Economic Development Foundation, a chamber, the business community, and government get together and create an asset that's good for everybody.
Creating assets that are good for the community doesn't just happen overnight. Beginning in 1928, when the chamber raised funds for the first two crossings on the Guadalupe River, New Braunfels opened up River Road for one of its strongest economic sectors, tourism.
When you have a place like that, it creates beauty, it creates commerce, but it also creates tourism.
The chamber's been built on tourism for how long? My goodness, ever since the river was started flowing.
Water is the lifeblood of any community, and certainly in New Braunfels, without the Comal or Guadalupe rivers, we had a lot to lose.
In the 1950s, for the first time in history, the Comal Springs had ceased to flow due to a 7-year drought, and the city's $2 million annual tourism revenue was in jeopardy.
And so the chamber took a great deal of interest in saving the Comal Springs. So the water goes in, out in Uvalde and Hondo in that area, and then it comes out here. But before it gets here, there are a lot of wells in Bexar County and in San Antonio that are drawing it out. The straws are in the aquifer and they suck it out before we ever get it. There's nothing left at the end of the food chain.
Because if you think about it, in Texas, if you're sitting over the water or the oil, that's yours. So I'm putting my straw right straight down. Well, there's a whole lot more straws in San Antonio than there are up here. And I mean, it was an effort. I remember one Mrs., what was her name? She leaned over her table and said, "Judge, you just might as well get used to it. Your springs are gonna dry up." And I said, "Not on my watch, sister." Anyway, I sat back and shut up.
And so Mr. Yan and the group got together, folks from Hays County all the way to Uvalde County, and said we need to form a district to protect ourselves from another drought like that. And they went to the legislature, and the Edwards Underground Water District was created from that in I think it was 1959 to do more research, and it existed until 1993 when the Edwards Aquifer Authority was formed. And I was working with a group and the Chamber of Commerce because we needed more management oversight, and that's what we still have today. So the Chamber was one of the strong organizers of the effort to protect the water on this side of San Antonio.
We have been able to maintain and preserve the spring level. No one would have believed it 25, 30 years ago. Nobody. Everybody has not only focused on the economy, they focused on water and did a dang good job.
Bridging the divide between business and politics has been integral since the Chamber's inception. So it comes as no surprise that in 1967, the Chamber held the first annual South Texas Legislative Conference to engage the community in political affairs.
The more New Braunfels citizens knew about what went into legislation, how they could influence it, then the better citizens we would be. One of the loveliest memories that I have is Barbara Bush was named Texan of the Year. And my husband, Tom, was backstage with me. Of course, the Secret Service is everywhere. And Mrs. Bush was standing there and had her purse. And Tom said, "May I escort you to the table?" She said, "I would love it, but the Secret Service doesn't want you to touch me." He said, "Yes, ma'am, but you can carry my purse." So Tom Castile carried the First Lady's purse. It's not for politicians, it's for public. Here's what we think, what do you think? Let's interact about water or transportation. So the Chamber, through its leadership and all their staff, do a magnificent job. It's not just laying out napkins on the table with a pencil.
In an effort to promote local small businesses, the Chamber organized the city's first business trade show in 1988.
The business trade show came up out of the idea that we needed to kind of highlight our businesses here in New Braunfels. You know, shop New Braunfels first.
We could network, learn about the diverse businesses that were in New Braunfels, learn about the people that were behind the name of the businesses. I think it created that sense of community within the business people because we got to know each other. From the beginning, it was a rip-roaring success.
And New Braunfels has never been shy about wanting to party. The initial night was always a big gala.
It's just kind of a little bit crazy and a lot of fun. It's a great party and well received. I think it has sold out every year since it was formed. We started at about 50 booths when we began. It was when it was still the small civic center here. And it's grown up to about 106 booths. The 30th show was this year, 2018. When I woke up that morning and I realized it was the anniversary of 9/11, 2001. And everybody talks about where they were. And I was at a Chamber Executive Committee meeting talking about the sneak preview in the trade show. We decided that we needed to cancel the sneak preview. It was a big decision because all the food is already made, all the plans are already made. And we announced that, and we announced that we would still have this show on Wednesday. And we also announced that anybody that wanted to have a refund of their ticket was welcome to do that, just to let us know. All the food was donated to nonprofits, and not a single person, not one person asked for a refund of their ticket. And so we were able to take all of that money and we donated it to the Staten Island Fire Department. It was the largest single donation from a community that they received that year. And again, that goes back to this community. That's what we do here. Some of the most generous, dedicated, giving people that you can meet.
Emerson once said, "There is no limit to what can be accomplished if it doesn't matter who gets the credit." Since 1961, New Braunfels has had only 2 executive directors of its Chamber of Commerce, favoring quality over quantity. Tom Purdom from 1961 to 1995, and Michael Meek from 1995 to present day.
And so there's been a concentrated effort of leadership, of history. You know, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. So they have a good understanding of where we've been, what works, what doesn't work. And so I think that's why it's set apart.
We had great leadership under Tom Purdom. He was selfless in what he did. When he set his mind to do something, he got it done, one way or the other. Michael Meek was one of the people that work very closely with him, and I think has taken that leadership to a higher level.
At the time I was hired, I had no idea that I was working for one of the premier, not only Chamber of Commerce managers in the country, but also someone that was a top economic development professional and a top tourism professional.
They've been a strong foundation where the volunteers like myself could rely on them to keep it organized and keep us informed about all the things that were happening with the Chamber, and many times a lot of things that are happening just in the community in general.
They are perfect examples of New Braunfels Chamber members, people who stay for the whole ride and see it through. Michael, what a personality to be able to hang for 32 years, putting up with people like me. Funny guy named Tom Purdom, he got me involved. Tireless, enthusiastic, willing to get his hands dirty. Look at Natural Bridge Caverns. That didn't just happen. Guess who put on a spelunker helmet and went out there in the mud and crawled in that hole? Tom Purdom. That's the kind of guy he was. They're men who accept a mission and stick with it right to the end. Both of them.
Leaders such as these have set the stage for responsible, selfless action in our community.
When the Economic Development Foundation started, we went to Gary Henry, who was then in charge of the operation, and said, Gary, you know, we really need you to participate in this. And I will never forget what he said or did. He said, John, you know, your Economic Development Foundation is going to work, and it's going to be good. He said, but it's going to make my wages go up. It's not going to help Schlitterbahn specifically. He said, but it's good for the community. And he wrote a check for like $10,000. That's a good example of how it really works in this town.
For a chamber to succeed, it requires people to care about two things simultaneously: commerce and community. And that's where New Braunfels excels. In this brief history of time, there have been countless projects born out of the chamber.
Through the years, the Chamber has been that organization that has seen a need and gone out and solved the problem.
Today, it's one of the strongest JC chapters in the state of Texas.
This has been a tourism mecca for over 100 years.
It was an opportunity to help individuals in need in the community. There have been numerous committees that the Chamber forms, all for the betterment of this community.
The city and the chamber had a sausage day and then had a sausage week. Well, we didn't envision how big it was going to get.
It's quite an honor to be named basically the Citizen of the Year.
Our early leaders found that it was so important to have volunteer leadership in town. They were the ones giving their time, talent, and treasure. And so it's important to honor them.
In 1972, when we had a major flood, the people of Braunfels, Germany took up a collection. And out of that, we now have the Braunfels Foundation Trust.
Bill and Nan Dillon we're going to deed to an organization over 80 pieces of handmade furniture. The Dillons wanted that property to be a museum, and that's where the Heritage Society was formed.
Our United Way of Comal County was really formed to be an opportunity for individuals who want to give back.
Do we want to put together an incubator here? We'd like to start growing our own.
And there are a lot of programs that don't necessarily immediately impact the business community, like the educational partnership that we have with the schools. But in the long run, it will. Before it's over, said and done, the chamber and education partnering together will make a difference in the economy.
But for communities and schools, these children would not only not be in school, but they would be probably on the street. So they truly just changed people's lives.
It gave me an opportunity to learn the community that I thought I knew.
When we opened for the first full semester, we almost filled the building with 1,000 students.
That is to the Chamber of Commerce's credit that we have such a successful and viable civic and convention center.
Two Tarts is a success story.
The enrollment grew over the next 9 years, and so the Business Education Partnership looked at a 30,000 square foot expansion.
I would think of the chamber in one word as impactful.
I would say inclusive.
Catalytic.
Active. Productive.
Busy.
Phenomenal.
It's just without comparison. But then again, New Braunfels is sort of without comparison.
100 years ago, the New Braunfels Chamber was created on a foundation of hard work, perseverance, community pride, and always striving to do more for the people and businesses of New Braunfels. Those values are still guiding the Chamber's work today. With a century of achievement behind us, the Chamber looks forward to the future where we are committed to continued prosperity and securing a sustainable way of life that has attracted people to this area since the city founding in 1845.